If someone had told me a year ago that I would destroy my marriage in a single night, I would have laughed. I always imagined myself as the kind of woman who'd never cheat, who'd never risk something real for something shallow. I was the responsible one, the practical one, the wife who knows what she has. But life has a way of revealing who you really are when temptation whispers your name. For me, that whisper came in the form of Travis Johnson, a name I knew long before he ever replied to my message. I had a harmless crush on him back in college. He was the campus golden boy, guitar, messy hair, careless smile. The kind of guy girls fought over. And I wasn't special to him back then. I was just one of those girls who admired him from the back row. Fast forward 12 years later, he was famous. Not superstar famous, but well-known enough to perform in theaters, tour cities, and have a loyal fan base. I followed him on Instagram the way people follow old childhood nostalgia, not seriously, just occasionally checking what became of them. One evening, I commented on one of his stories. A harmless little heart emoji. No intention, no plan, just bored curiosity. But then he replied. That was the moment everything shifted. It wasn't what he said, it was what I felt. That old teenage fantasy suddenly waking up inside a woman who believed her life had become too predictable. He messaged again. Then again. Flirty. Friendly. Casual. As if we were sharing a secret no one else needed to know. I could have told Jonathan. I didn't. Instead, I hid the messages like they were precious. I'm not proud to admit it, but those messages made me feel something I didn't even realize I missed. Excitement. Attention. Validation. Something selfish. Something dangerous. Soon I found myself waiting for Travis's replies, more than I waited for Jonathan to come home from work. And Jonathan, my sweet, steady Jonathan, didn't suspect a thing. He trusted me. More than I ever deserved. It escalated slowly at first. A late-night conversation here. A compliment there. A playful inside joke. Then one night, Travis sent a message that crossed a line. Something suggestive. Something no married woman should entertain. I hesitated, for maybe 4 seconds. And then I flirted back. That was the first time I cheated. Not physically, but mentally, emotionally. The kind of cheating that starts in the mind long before it reaches the body. It felt wrong. It felt thrilling. And that combination is addictive. So the messages became more intimate, more personal. We joked about college memories.
We shared stories about our lives now.
We flirted openly, and I was the one opening the door wider each day. Jonathan was always there in the background, cooking dinner with me, laughing at shows, reaching for my hand at night. And yet, I kept drifting further away from him, because Travis represented a version of me I never became. The fun girl. The wild girl. The girl who musicians write songs about. Ridiculous, I know. But when you start craving fantasy more than reality, the lines between right and wrong blur until everything looks like a justification. And I justified everything. He's just an old crush. It's not serious. I deserve something exciting. Jonathan will never leave anyway. The last one. That was the biggest lie I ever told myself. By the time Travis came to Atlanta for his show, our messages weren't innocent anymore. They were charged, heated, full of subtext that wasn't even pretending to be friendly. He invited me to the show. I said yes, without thinking. When he told me he wanted to see me afterward, privately, I didn't say no. I should've. God, I should've. But entitlement makes you believe that your actions won't have consequences. That the world will somehow bend to protect you from your own stupidity. So on the night of my anniversary dinner, I did something unforgivable. Jonathan had made reservations at Murphy's Steakhouse, our favorite place, our tradition. He wore the shirt I loved on him, combed his hair the way I liked, smiled at me like the world began and ended with us. And I was checking the time, making sure I wouldn't miss Travis's performance. I wasn't thinking of our marriage. I wasn't thinking of my vows. I wasn't thinking of the man sitting across from me, still believing I was his loyal wife. I was thinking of a fantasy. I looked at Jonathan and told him I needed one night with another man. I can still see the exact moment the color drained from his face. He didn't yell. He didn't beg. He just stared at me, like I had become a stranger. And instead of backing down, instead of realizing the horror of what I was doing, I doubled down on it. It's just closure. It's something I've always wanted. You and I are solid. Every sentence I spoke was another knife in his chest. I didn't just cheat that night. I broke him. And the worst part? I didn't even understand the damage I was doing, not then. I stood up from the table, wore my black dress, the one he loved, the one I should have reserved only for him, and I left for Travis. I walked out on my marriage like it was temporary, like I could come back in the morning and everything would magically reset. But marriages don't reset.
People don't reset.
Trust doesn't reset. I just didn't know that yet. What happened with Travis? I won't go into details, not because I'm hiding, but because it wasn't some epic love story. It was empty.
Shallow.
A fantasy with cracked paint once you got close. Nothing magical. Nothing worth destroying a marriage over. I realized that by 3 a.m., but realization is useless when the damage is already done. I came home early next morning rehearsing my excuses, telling myself Jonathan would be hurt, but he'd forgive me. He always forgave me. I opened the door. Silence. Not the sleeping husband silence. A hollow, lifeless silence. I went to our bedroom. The bed was untouched. I called his name. Once, then louder. No answer. I opened our closet. Half the hangers were empty. His shoes gone. His jacket's gone. My heart dropped so hard it hurt. I checked the bathroom. His toothbrush missing. His razor missing. The reality hit me like a punch to the stomach. He left. Not for an hour. Not for the night. Not to cool off. Jonathan, my husband, was gone. Because of me. Because of what I did. Because of the one night I thought I deserved. And, in that moment, my fantasy finally shattered. My selfishness finally cracked open. My realization finally began to bloom. Painfully, brutally, honestly. I didn't just cheat. I didn't just betray him. I destroyed the one person who loved me more than anything. And this was only the beginning of my consequences. People think punishment comes fast. They think karma strikes like thunder, sudden and dramatic. But the truth? Punishment is slow. It crawls. It waits. It settles onto your chest like a weight you can't breathe through. The moment I saw the empty closet, that weight found me. I dropped to my knees, clutching an empty hanger like it could somehow bring him back. It swung gently from a movement of the air conditioner, the metal clinking in a rhythm that sounded like mockery. For the first few minutes, my brain refused to accept what my eyes were showing me. He must have gone to a hotel. He's angry, he'll come back. He just needs space. Denial, the only oxygen my mind could find. But then I walked into the home office, and that denial died instantly. His desk? Gone. His computer?
Gone.
His equipment, even the photography gear he hadn't touched in years?
Gone.
Files, notebooks, hard drives, all missing. A man doesn't pack up his entire life in the middle of the night unless he intends to disappear. My breath hitched. My hands shook uncontrollably. I called his phone. Straight to voicemail. I texted him. Delivered. Never read. I dialed again. And again. And again. 17 calls. 17 attempts to reach a man who no longer existed inside the world I had taken for granted. At some point, I slid down the hallway wall and started crying, the kind of cry that doesn't sound human. The kind that rips through you because your insides are collapsing. I didn't cry because I cheated. I cried because, for the first time, I understood what I had lost. Sunrise crept into the house like a trespasser, revealing the emptiness I had created. I couldn't stay still. I tore through the house looking for clues, hoping, desperately, that he had left behind something. Anything. A note. A message. A hint. But Jonathan didn't leave chaos. He left with precision. He didn't slam doors. He didn't break things. He didn't even leave behind the smell of his cologne. It was like he erased himself. And the realization hit me hard. He didn't leave because he was angry. He left because he was done. I drove to his office that afternoon. wearing the same dress I had worn the night before, the dress I now hated more than anything I owned. When I walked into the lobby, the receptionist, Mike, looked up with mild confusion. "Oh, hey Rachel," he said. "Jonathan called in sick. Food poisoning or something." Food poisoning. That's the story he gave them. The same man who couldn't lie to save his life had suddenly crafted a flawless exit. "Did he say anything else?" I asked, my voice trembling so much I had to steady myself on the counter. Mike blinked. "No. He seemed fine yesterday. Mentioned he was updating his portfolio soon."
Why?
"Did something happen?" I forced a smile.
No.
"Just checking." I left before Mike could ask more questions, because I knew my face would betray me. The next few days were torture. Every corner of the house reminded me of him. Every silence felt like punishment. Every hour felt like a countdown to a realization I wasn't ready for. Jonathan wasn't cooling off. Jonathan wasn't taking space. Jonathan had vanished from our home, our city, and maybe even from the version of himself I had built my life around. I filed a missing person report, a desperate, impulsive move from someone who thought the world would take pity on her tears. The detective listened, pen tapping idly on his notebook. When I told him that Jonathan left after I spent a night with someone I used to know, his posture changed. His face hardened slightly. His voice lost whatever gentleness it had. "Ma'am," he said, "your husband isn't missing. He withdrew his own money, took his belongings, and left voluntarily. This is not a criminal case. This is a marital dispute." His words sliced through me. He left voluntarily. Voluntarily.
By choice.
By intention. It wasn't an emotional meltdown. It wasn't a heat-of-the-moment reaction. Jonathan planned it. He planned to leave me, and I had given him every reason to. 3 days later, the bank called. "Mrs. Spencer, we're calling regarding a withdrawal made from your joint account." A bolt of fear shot through me. "What withdrawal?" $37,000. "Fully authorized with your husband's signature." My grip tightened around the phone. That was our emergency fund, the one safety net I had always assumed would never be touched. The bank rep continued, "We just wanted to confirm that both parties were aware, given the amount." Both parties were not aware. Only the one who still had a functioning life was aware. I hung up and sank onto the couch, staring blankly at the wall. Jonathan had taken his half. Exactly his half. Not a dollar more. That was how I knew he wasn't trying to punish me financially. He was just securing his new life. The life he no longer intended to live with me. The following week felt unreal. I kept expecting him to call.
To yell. To cry.
To ask why I did what I did. But he didn't want answers. He didn't want my explanation. He didn't want me. I reached out to friends. Most were shocked. Some were sympathetic. A few judged me, silently or openly. "Why would you risk everything for some musician? You always talked so highly of Jonathan. You should have told him how you felt instead of doing that." Every sentence was another needle under my skin. But the worst was talking to his sister. She picked up on the second ring. "Rachel? Why are you calling?" Her tone wasn't angry. It was cold, as if she already knew. I need to know if Jonathan contacted you." A long pause. "No. Has he said anything? Anything at all?"
No.
"But if he did, I wouldn't tell you." My throat tightened. "I made a mistake," I whispered. "No, Rachel," she said softly, but with an edge I'll never forget. "You made a choice." Then she hung up, and for the first time, I understood the difference between those two words. Weeks passed. No credit card activity. No phone usage. No calls to family. No social media. Jonathan had erased himself so thoroughly, it was like he never existed. Every night I lay awake replaying the moment I walked out of that restaurant, the moment I thought I could chase a fantasy and return to a husband who would never abandon me. How arrogant. How stupid. How devastatingly naive. The worst part wasn't that he left. The worst part was knowing he left because he finally realized he deserved better. And I was the one who proved it to him. 3 months after he vanished, a package arrived. A FedEx envelope.
Thin. Plain.
Anonymous. My hands shook as I opened it. Divorce papers. No letter. No message. No argument. No goodbye.
Just his signature where it needed to be. Clean.
Final.
Precise.
It wasn't anger. It wasn't revenge. It was closure, the kind he didn't ask for, but the kind I forced him to need. My husband didn't scream at me.
He didn't insult me.
He didn't punish me. He simply walked out of my life. And that was the sharpest punishment of all. I sat on the floor with those papers for an hour, maybe 2, maybe longer. Time stopped mattering after he left. My tears smudged the edges of the document. And my realization, finally complete, settled into my bones. I didn't just cheat on my husband. I pushed him into becoming someone who no longer needed me or loved me at all. And that was only the beginning of how far I would fall. They don't tell you what happens after you ruin your life. Movies cut to black. Books end with lessons learned. People on Reddit just say, well, that's what you get. But real life doesn't end after the consequences hit. It keeps going, even when you wish it wouldn't. When Jonathan sent the divorce papers, I didn't sign them for 3 months. Not because I thought he'd come back, but because signing them felt like putting the final nail in a coffin I had built with my own hands. Eventually, reality forced me to do it. I signed. I mailed them. And just like that, the marriage I destroyed was legally dead. But the grief? That took longer. Grief over losing him. Grief over losing the version of myself I once believed I was. Grief over realizing that the one man who loved me unconditionally had turned into a shadow I could no longer reach. The months after our divorce dragged like wet cement. I tried to date, failed. Tried to distract myself, failed. Tried to rebuild my self-worth, failed miserably. I never admitted this to anyone, but I checked his online presence every week. Then, every day. Instagram?
Account gone.
Facebook?
Gone.
LinkedIn? Only an old profile with no updates. It was like he'd vanished into vapor. And that mystery, that silence, tortured me far more than any angry words ever could have. Because silence means peace. And peace meant he healed without me. Year 1. The first shock. It happened completely by accident. I was scrolling through an architecture magazine in a dentist's office, flipping pages mindlessly to keep from thinking. That's when I froze. Because there, across a glossy page, was a name I hadn't spoken aloud in over a year. Jonathan Spencer. And next to the name, a full-page spread of an abstract hotel facade glowing under sunset light. The photographer credit? Summit Architectural Photography. Founder, Jonathan Spencer. My throat closed. My hands trembled. Because the image in the magazine wasn't just beautiful, it was breathtaking. The kind of photo you'd expect from an artist who had been mastering his craft for decades, not from the man I once begged to be more stable. The article talked about his rapid rise, his distinct visual signature, his unmatched eye for geometry and light. They called him visionary. My husband. The husband I left behind. The husband I dismissed as safe and boring. A visionary. I walked out of the dentist's office without finishing my appointment. I couldn't breathe.
Couldn't think.
Couldn't believe that while I was drowning in regret, Jonathan was rising. Higher than ever. Without me. Year 2. The success I didn't see coming. Once I saw his name in that magazine, it felt like the universe started showing him to me everywhere. A billboard in downtown? His photograph of a corporate HQ. A YouTube video? An interview with him about sustainable design photography. A local business event? His company sponsoring an architectural exhibit. It became clear. Jonathan wasn't missing. He was thriving. And the world was taking notice. I learned through articles, through whispers, through industry pages, that he had moved to Denver, opened a studio, hired a team, and gained nationwide contracts. Every new achievement of his carved another wound inside me. Not because I resented him, but because I realized how much potential I had smothered when I insisted he stay small, stay predictable, stay safe. He wasn't safe. He was extraordinary. and I had been too selfish to see it. Year 3. The invitation that changed everything. 3 years after he vanished from my life, I attended the Environmental Architecture Foundation's annual gala with a man I was casually dating. His name was Raymond, wealthy, polite, shallow. The kind of man who would never surprise you and never break you because he didn't have the emotional depth to do either. I dressed carefully that night. A black gown, subtle jewelry, hair in soft curls. For a moment, I felt almost like my old self. The version of me before I ruined everything. The ballroom was grand, decorated with cascading lights, crisp white linens, tables adorned with glass centerpieces. People took their seats as the MC stepped onto the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we have the honor of welcoming our keynote speaker, visionary photographer, award-winning creative director, and this year's recipient of the Innovation and Sustainable Design Award. My breath caught.
No, it couldn't be.
Mr. Jonathan Spencer. I didn't hear applause. I only heard the sound of something shattering. My wine glass had slipped out of my hand. The room blurred at the edges. And then I saw him, walking onto the stage like he belonged there.
Tall.
Confident.
Composed.
Wearing a tailored black suit that made him look like success carved into human form. He wasn't the Jonathan I remembered. This Jonathan carried himself like a man who had rebuilt himself from steel. Someone who had burned, endured, transformed, and now stood unafraid in the spotlight. His voice cut through the room. 3 years ago, I learned that sometimes the greatest gift someone can give you is showing you exactly who they are when they think it doesn't matter. My heart clenched so painfully, I had to grip the edge of the table. He continued, calm, controlled, powerful. Betrayal destroys some people, but for others, it becomes the foundation of something extraordinary. The audience hung on every word, but I drowned in them. Every sentence he spoke was not about me, but it cut through me, because somewhere inside me, I had always known he would become more than I ever allowed him to be. I just never imagined I wouldn't be there to witness it. When the keynote ended, the room erupted into applause. Jonathan stepped off stage, swallowed by admirers and colleagues. He smiled at them the way I used to wish he'd smile at me. Raymond placed a hand on my arm. "You look pale. Are you all right?"
No.
I was not all right. I excused myself and slipped out into the lobby, searching for him like an addict chasing a drug. And there he was, at the valet stand, talking quietly to a woman stepping out of the shadows. A woman with striking features, elegant posture, and the kind of presence that radiated quiet confidence. She laughed at something he said and placed her hand on his arm. Something inside me snapped. "Jonathan," I called out. He turned slowly, deliberately, and when his eyes met mine, there was nothing. No anger, no softness, no recognition, just calm indifference. "Hi," I breathed, stepping closer. I need to talk to you." He adjusted his cufflinks. About what? His tone wasn't cold. It was worse. It was polite, like he was speaking to a stranger. "I made a mistake," I whispered. "The biggest mistake of my life. I ruined everything. I broke us. And I regret it every single day." My voice cracked. My hands shook.
I didn't care who saw.
Dignity dies long before regret does. "I'm sorry," I choked. "I'm so sorry, Jonathan. Please say something." He studied me the way someone studies architecture, detached, analytical, distant. "You did throw away the best thing that ever happened to you," he said. A flicker of hope sparked in me, hope that he meant himself. But then he stepped closer and said, effortlessly, and I wasn't talking about me. It felt like the ground vanished beneath my feet. Before I could respond, the woman stepped forward. She was stunning.
Composed.
Self-assured in a way I never was. "Ready to go?" she asked him softly. He nodded, then turned back to me. "This is Samantha," he said. "My business partner. And my fiancé." My chest tightened like someone had cinched a belt around my ribs. Fiancé. He had moved on. Loved again. Built a future. one I had no place in. The valet pulled up a sleek Tesla. Jonathan opened the door for her. Then he looked at me one last time. Not with love. Not with anger. Not with pain. Just finality. I hope you find what you're still looking for, Rachel. The door closed. The car pulled away. And I stood under the bright lobby lights alone, watching the man I destroyed disappear into a future where I didn't exist. There is no punishment greater than seeing someone become everything you stopped them from being, and realizing they became it without you.